Today is a momentous day in the cycling calendar. Shimano have just released the latest and greatest version of their flagship road group set, Dura-Ace.
And not only that, there's a whole new Shimano Ultegra group set and a complete raft of new aero wheels too. In this video, we're going to tell you everything that you need to know.
For many, it's only a dream to be able to ride group sets like these. But remember, where Dura-Ace goes, other Shimano group sets follow.
Everything in Shimano's history has led to this point. Oh, holy smokes, that's a good looking group set. This is Shimano Dura-Ace R9200. Si will give you the details in just a second, and then we'll hear from one of Shimano's engineers, Tim Gerritz, on how the group set has been developed over 8 years. And then I'm going to run through Ultegra and the new wheels.
Thanks, Ollie. Yes, Dura-Ace 9200. Feast your eyes on this. Now, as always, when developing new Dura-Ace, Shimano say that their focus is on creating the very best equipment possible for the world's best bike racers. So any changes to Dura-Ace 9100 should be framed in that context. First up, this new Dura-Ace is now 12-speed, and Shimano have used their extra sprockets to refine the gear ratios in what they're calling the racing sweet spot. So on the 11-28 and the 11-30 cassette options, there's now a 15 and a 16 and a 17 tooth sprocket. So those are the gears that you use when you're riding at sort of 40 to 44k an hour. So when you're in a peloton, you can always get that optimal cadence. Now, interestingly, there is going to be a wider ratio cassette as well, an 11-34, sticking with 11 tooth smallest sprockets for a very good reason, and that is drivetrain efficiency. So larger sprockets are more efficient than smaller ones because of reduced chain angles. And actually they've translated that up front as well. So the largest chain set option has grown from 5339 to a 5440. Again, reduced chain angles, and also you're likely to be able to run a straighter chain line to the gears that you use most in a racing situation. Again, saving some watts there. Now, brilliantly, the new 12-speed cassette will still fit on an 11-speed free hub body, which is great news for anyone with loads of spare pairs of racing wheels. But interestingly, the new 12-speed dedicated free hub bodies have a new spline design on there to increase the contact area between the cassette and the free hub. The shifters now communicate wirelessly with your rear derailleur, which is like the master in the system. That, though, you can see is hardwired to the front derailleur, and the two then share a battery. The reason for that, Shimano say, is for battery life. You'll get 1,000 kilometers of riding in roughly between charges. It also gives enough power to the derailleurs to get that trademark Di2 shifting. And, would you believe, it's got even faster. Shimano say that the speed of shifting has increased by 45% and 58% front and back, respectively. That's not all down to the mechs, it's also down to the fact that Shimano have updated Hyperglide to Hyperglide Plus. So that refers to all the complicated, super precise ramps and variable teeth profile on the cassette, and also the chain too. And it now gives super smooth shifting both up the cassette and down the cassette. Shimano in fact say there's no need to back off the power at all when shifting anymore. It's not all about the shifting though, not at all. The brakes have been further refined from version 1 of Dura-Ace disc brakes. So there is more pad clearance than before, and also you'll notice the rotors are different. So the rotors are now the same spec as Shimano's XTR mountain bike rotors. The reason for that is they're more resistant to that kind of microscopic heat deformation that you get after really heavy braking. So they should run quieter after you've pulled really hard on the brakes. And then also Shimano have introduced servo wave technology into these, which improves the modulation of the brakes. The levers are effectively more squeezable. There is also a new power meter on here. Interestingly, there is now no mechanical shifting option on Dura-Ace, but there is still a rim brake option, which is very interesting. Then lastly, and very importantly, the ergonomics of the levers have changed. Now, to go into more detail here, we're going to give you a sneak peek of a video that we've got coming up very soon, where we do a detailed first look of Dura-Ace 9200, expanding on all the points we've just been talking about, plus much more besides. Now, before we move on to answer some burning questions, one of the most important things on any group set, I think, is lever ergonomics. After all, you might shift gears every couple of minutes, but the chances are you're going to be holding your levers all of the time. And I must say, when Shimano launched previous generation Dura-Ace, I marveled at just how they'd managed to fit everything in such a small space. But over the last development cycle, they say they've been listening to feedback from their pro racers and also watching how they ride and race. And they've made some changes to the ergonomics. Notably, they've actually extended the lever body by 4.6 millimeters to give your fingers a little bit more space behind the brake lever. They've also extended the top of the levers to give another aero hand position. And while the lever body is that little bit longer, the actual lever blade is still within easy reach of your fingers. Plus there is reach adjust so that you can bring it closer to the handlebars for if you've got smaller hands. And the other thing is that the shift buttons have changed as well. So they've been made slightly longer, so it's easier to shift when you're in the drops. And there's greater differentiation between the up and the down shift buttons, so that it's easier to shift when you've got winter gloves on or when you've got cold, wet hands.
That's really interesting about the ergonomics and the changes to that, because there is a definite change in the positions riders are adopting while riding their bikes and the way that they're holding on to the levers, as you well found out when you recently tried to ride a 10-mile time trial on a road bike in under 20 minutes. Yeah,
very true, isn't it? We learned a lot about aerodynamics recently, and road bikes are only getting faster. Now, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that whilst wireless is just one of many changes Shimano have made to the new Dura-Ace, it's probably presented the biggest engineering challenge, hasn't it? And so to get the lowdown, the inside scoop on how that happened, we caught up with one of their engineers, Tim Gerrits, to find out.
So Tim, to start, why Shimano decided to go down the wireless route?
Actually, it's been a long development. To be honest, we already planned this for the previous generation of Dura-Ace. And as you know, for Shimano, if we bring new technologies, it must suit it perfect. It's not a material for a material sake or a technology for technology's sake. It is really to improve the riding experience. And as said, we were already planning it for the previous generation, but our studies proved that we weren't ready to bring it up to the level as you would expect from Shimano. So now it's there, and after many years of development, and yeah, it works now up to the standard.
You said many years. How many years did it take to?
Well, you know that it's already almost 5 years since the last group set was released, and we did already active working on that at least the 3 years before in the development phase of the previous generations, and that continued all along.
What was maybe the challenge you had to face?
The challenge we had to face is we did our investigation, we did our homework, and during our intense conversation with the professional teams, they all warned us like, well, if you go that direction, be very careful, because what you see on a normal world, which everything is controlled by certification, is very different than in the racing scene. If you see professional racing, there you have helicopters, you have telemetry, you have so many other frequencies that are outside the bandwidth of normal accepted that could give a disturbance. And they warned us about that because they had issues with other devices that pro teams are using. And then we studied it, we made our prototypes, and then we started and we thought we were better than everything what was out there. And then we went measuring in the actual races, and then we got a little bit of a shock.
Why a shock?
Because it was actually much more severe. What kind of interference could happen than what we expected, even setting our standards high. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and then it was already too late in the development phase.
So what did change with the new group set?
We started from scratch, and as you have learned also, we have now our own proprietary protocol in order to have a much faster and directly connection towards between the STI and the rear derailleur. And then we fine-tuned that over the last couple of years to make it really ready for this generation of Dura-Ace.
Specific question, what are the changes between Hyperglide and the new Hyperglide Plus?
It's the fine-tuning of the teeth profiles, especially shifting to a heavier gear, has caused quite a, still under load, quite a chain shock sometimes, which is for us still the challenge as being the developers and engineers making smooth shifting and making accurate shifting to eliminate that. And with this new development we were able to get that last difference, especially when you go sprinting and you go to a heavier gear on the higher loads, to even make a faster transition between gears and losing less of efficiency and energy and make it the best possible drivetrain.
What's your favorite part of the new group set?
My favorite part of the new group set is the STIs. And not because they're wireless, of course that's a great achievement, but the way the ergonomics have come. If you see that the first group I was involved with was the first 10-speed group 20 years ago, and if I see how much the riding style changed, but also the ergonomics have changed to this group set, then I'm really proud to see where it came from and where it is now to be the best possible cockpit for all kind of riding styles.
But that's not all. As mentioned, Shimano is launching not one, but two group sets. Ultegra 8100 has been revealed and it looks incredible. Unfortunately, I've not been able to get my hands on it in person, but you can see images of it here. In terms of functionality and features, it shares all the same things as the new Dura-Ace. It's available in both rim brake and disc brake versions and is only going to be Di2. A really cool detail is that there's now a power meter for it too that's been trickled down into Ultegra for the first time, which is great as it means power meters are becoming more widely available. There are Ultegra level wheels too, which have the same rigidity and aerodynamics as the Dura-Ace ones. In fact, they're aerodynamically identical. They're just a little bit heavier. So put into context, for the 36 millimeter deep tubeless wheels, the Dura-Ace ones are said to be 1338 grams a pair, whereas the Ultegra ones are 1481 grams a pair, so around 100 grams heavier. The exact pricing of Ultegra is going to vary depending on your currency and the territory that you're in, but you can expect what we always see from Ultegra in that for a significant saving, you're getting what is essentially a slightly heavier version of Dura-Ace. I'm really excited about Shimano's new wheels. As before, it's been over 5 years since they last launched a performance road wheel set, and we actually sneakily saw prototype versions of these being used by Shimano's pro teams in the 2020 Tour de France. But they're here now, and the headline stats of them are that there's 3 depths available, so the C60s, the C50s, and then the C36s, which are sort of lighter weight climbing wheel. And there's a big emphasis on stiffness and rigidity in the wheels, thanks in part to these new hub designs. So the new hub has a direct engagement, which results in near instantaneous pickup when you start pedaling on the crank. The profile has been completely revised. It's said to be more aerodynamic now and is a more toroidal U shape. It's wider as well to suit the trend for wider tyres. All 3 depths are going to be available in tubeless and tubular versions for disc brakes and just tubular for rim brakes.
Wow, there is a lot to take in there. So much so, in fact, we've had to have a little sit down. Ollie, what are your first impressions?
Without doubt, speed of shifting, it's just rapid. And then also I think the fact that it's now 12 speed, but also it's the ease of setup, the fact that you can just set your levers and then you don't have to worry about wiring them through the frame. I know we've seen that on wireless group sets before, but I think that's a big thing for me. And then also the sort of customization aspect of it, that never really took hold with the previous Dura-Ace, even though that was something you could do. But now here it seems to be a big deal, and I think something that really will be a key feature.
Yeah, interesting. For me, it's that Hyperglide Plus. So kind of sticking with your speed of shifting. It was launched on mountain bikes a couple of years ago. I've never had the privilege of riding it actually, so this is my first time on Hyperglide Plus, and having spent a lifetime riding bikes where upshifts and downshifts feel distinctly different, don't they? It feels different through your feet, through the pedals. And now it's almost eerie how smooth the downshifts are. And it's remarkable actually. And when Shimano say that you now don't have to ease off on the pedals, I can imagine there'll be no second thoughts shifting from the 12 to the 11 mid-sprint finish. Like, not that that applies to me anymore. Didn't really apply to me back in the day either, but still, it's, incredible that. What about the ergonomics, Ollie? New lever design.
Yeah, well, you've got that shape now where they're sort of shaped inwards a bit to adjust your hand position. And I think that's really interesting, especially when we've seen a lot of riders starting to have that trend of tilting their levers inwards to get a more aero position, a bit like Remco Evenepoel.
I thought it would get you excited, an aero hand position.
Yeah, so the fact that these new levers are kind of almost accommodating and helping that position, I think, is a really cool feature. And also the shape of them is a bit different as well, but that's because you've got the servo wave technology in there, which I first saw when it was on GRX, which helps increase the modulation and the sort of progression of the brake lever pull compared to the old one.
Very noticeable that actually. On previous generation Dura-Ace, the discs felt a bit like rim brakes, didn't they? In that there's a distinct point in the lever throat where the pad contacted the disc just like it would contact the rim, whereas now, as you say, they're kind of more squeezable, aren't they? There's more of the lever stroke is modulating, and so that potentially, I guess, when you really get used to it, is going to allow you to get even faster, I would imagine. Now, final point, aesthetics. We've got through this whole video, and I don't think we've really mentioned it very much.
Well, being perfect, completely frank, I think if you've got bad eyesight, you'd struggle to notice that it's a different one. Like, I think it does look very similar, doesn't it?
It does. The difference between Dura-Ace 9000 and 9100 was marked, whereas this is definitely more of an evolution. The sleek black look remains. Actually, when you do compare them side by side, the previous one had a kind of like black to dark grey fade, whereas this is definitely it's got blacker, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of a bit more black, isn't it? Spinal Tap sort of references coming in. But I think, visually, biggest change, I think, the front met.
Yeah.
But how much smaller that is now, which is great as well, because it's less frontal area and a bit more aero, which is my favourite thing. But that looks so neat. It instantly makes the previous one just look bulky and antiquated, which I never thought I'd think, but...
Yeah, true that. The last point on aesthetics, actually, weirdly, I love the fact that there's no decals on the wheels. That's kind of like, I don't know how they've done it. It's just kind of magically Dura-Aced. It's very cool. No wheel decals. Thumbs up from me. Right, that is the end of our whistle-stop run-through of a raft of new products. As we said earlier, there will be specific videos coming out too. First look of new Dura-Ace will be hot on the heels of this one. Then Ollie will be taking you through all of the new wheel options very soon as well. And as soon as we get our grubby little mitts on Ultegra, that one will be dropping soon too. Make sure you let us know in the comment section what your first impressions are of these new products. Can't wait to read those. We'll get involved in the comment section as well. And lastly, please give this video a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed it.